On the day and was
right side and picked off. They got it down the sideline. It's Denzel Ward. He's to the 35, 40. He's to the 50. He's to the 40, 30, 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown. A pick six. Denzel Ward is back. On the right side to Chubb. Chubb over the 50. Chubb to the 45. Chubb to the 40. Down the sideline 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. There he goes. Touchdown. Nick Chubb.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Don't think any news has happened in the last 2 hours or so. It's been an all rather quiet day in Browns fandom by normal off-season standards. But enough of the jokes. I'm quite tired already, and I think that everybody else is already feeling it. It's 7:39 here in the UK as we record this. We've had about 6 hours of this now already with the Watson news dropping. So, we're going to have a bit of an in-depth look into it here on the Believeland Brits podcast, part of the 410 Yards Network. Thank you for joining us this evening or on whatever podcast housing service you listen to. We are on pretty much all of them now. Guys, second episode. I'll welcome you both in. Jen, how are you this afternoon?
I'm all right.
Just all right? Yeah?
Yeah, coping.
Yeah, I think we'll get into it, won't we? Owain, how about you, mate?
Yeah, I think it's a day that we've quietly been dreading for quite a while, isn't it? And it happened to fall on the day of the podcast. So, it was great timing. Could have been tomorrow or Wednesday. We'd have had a few more days to digest it and calm down, but it is what it is.
Yeah. So what we do is normally we schedule our time in much in advance. So I've got another podcast to record after this one, for example. So there's no way of moving it. And I get the 16-page report off someone on Twitter with about half an hour to go. So I have these two in the room pretty much ready to go and saying, come on, we're ready. I'm there highlighting bits of the report and having it just to the left of my screen. But that's what we live for. That's the whole point of doing this sort of thing. It's bringing you the news as it happens, apparently. But first of all, let's not touch it for 5 minutes. Let's go on to the other stuff of which has been happening in Browns fandom. First of all, though, you'll notice that from the last podcast, we are missing Sean. He has not been booted out after one episode. That would be cruel. No, he is on the COVID exempt list for this week. So he's on the inactives. We hope to have him back for next week, but he's unable to play today. So wishing Sean well. Hope it doesn't kick your ass too much, mate. And look forward to having you back next week. So like I said, let's get into some non-Watson news to start with, because who wants the main course before you've had your starter? Training camp has started, which means actual football again. We can not do the whole talking now. We actually have proper football that we can talk about. Who needs all the flipping talk pieces? So a rather mixed bag in training camp so far by the looks of it. Wide receivers being rather at the heart of the news. After one day, Anthony Schwartz went down with a knee injury. He is day-to-day, according to Kevin Stefanski. Isaiah Weston, who is a undrafted free agent, ended up with a ACL tear. That was announced late last night, I believe it was. Another undrafted free agent, Michael Woods II, was apparently the highlight of Saturday. Don't know anything more about today's training camp. That is currently ongoing. So no news to currently share there. But Michael Woods II apparently flourished in drills on Saturday. And just to round off the injury report on the wide receiver section, David Bell has a foot injury. He is also day-to-day. So not exactly where we want to be by the looks of it in terms of wide receivers. Owain, what do you reckon in terms of the wide receiver room at the moment? Just a quick sort of overview, because obviously it was an issue coming in to this season, the wide receiver room in any case. Obviously, we bolstered with Amari Cooper, but we've lost Jarvis Landry, Rashard Higgins, and there's a reliance on some of the other guys. Does this worry you at all, or is it still too early?
In one sense, it does, because it was the room that I had the most concerns about. I think definitely on offense, but possibly with a whole roster to begin with. But what I would say is that these aren't like household names that have gone down this week. You know, it's unfortunate that we've lost Weston for an entire season. There was a lot of promise to him, I think, but Schwartz's day-to-day is unfortunate that he's missing any time in camp, because he missed a considerable amount last season and it seemed to hurt him. So for a player that we need to come on strong this season, it is a shame that he's missing any practice time at all. But yeah, I think the whole argument that this makes our team like considerably weaker, I don't think it's, you know, quite as it seems. It's just fringe players that are going down, but it's exacerbating the need that was already there, in my opinion. So whether they go out and address it, I'm not sure. I think there may be a few interesting names that could be potential targets for me in a trade. Whether they go and do that, I don't know, because I don't think they'll want to give up many draft assets now. But we'll see. I do think it's very much a worrying position. So say like Amari Cooper goes down at 1 point this season, then you're looking at DPJ as a 1, Schwartz as a 2, David Bell as a 3. We spoke about in the chat the other day. That does concern me. So whether they address that before, well, in the next few weeks, we'll see.
Yeah. The top 2 remaining free agents in the wide receiver market so far are Will Fuller and T.Y. Hilton. Jen, would you go after either of those at all at this point?
I think we're quite okay. Like, we don't need wide receivers as much because we do have the running backs, and pretty much anyone can catch a ball on that team. So I think it is an issue, but it's not a massive issue right now.
Fair enough. Well, why would you share that? I'm looking at Will Fuller and I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe just just on a 1-year deal, we have the cap space to make it happen.
Yeah, we do. I think it all depends on Schwartz, doesn't it? I think if Schwartz actually is day-to-day and he comes back relatively quickly, I think that negates the need for Fuller, because they are very much like for like, except Fuller's got a lot more, you know, proven NFL track record. The ones I'd be looking at, to be honest, I mentioned this in a tweet yesterday, is players that maybe teams are looking to move off of potentially. You know, teams with deep room. So you look at Denver Broncos have paid Cortland Sutton, they've paid Tim Patrick, they have Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler there, and you're wondering, is one of them maybe movable? That's the way I would look, because they are young, they've, you know, shown potential in college, and, you know, possibly the Denver Broncos could move off them, considering how much they give up for Russell Wilson. You never know. So I'm sure Andrew Berry's making calls around the league to see what players are available. But yeah, Fuller definitely depends on Schwartz for me.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. Jen, some better news for you in particular, in terms of how training camp has started. Your BFF Cade York, and yes, that is how he will be known on this podcast, ladies and gentlemen. So Jen's BFF Cade York, 6 for 6 on Saturday. No issues whatsoever when it came to kicking. He looks very assured already. Personally, though, I wouldn't make him kick in Berea at all. I would just put him at First Energy Stadium in all weathers to start. I don't care if he's disassociated from the rest of the group. You're kicking into the dog pound for 10 hours a day, and you're hitting every single one. That's just my views on it, just because kicking into the dog pound always seems to be the worst situation for a kicker. But apparently all the signs are pointing to everything being all right for Cade York. And then a couple of positive points on defense. Now, we were going to focus on defense a lot this afternoon, but news kind of got in the way. But something which I will say, in case we don't get round to it later on, 2 players in particular were pointed out for praise on Saturday in particular. Jordan Elliott, the defensive tackle, he has apparently bulked on a bit, but he's much lighter on his feet, which is exactly what you're looking for in a tackle. And Grant Delpit, another one of Jen's BFFs, knows where plays are before they happen. And there's apparently a great buzz around Grant Delpit this off season. And to be honest with you, that hasn't really changed much at all, has it?
No. He came on when he came back from injury last year. He obviously had a bit of a slow start, but he came on leaps and bounds towards the end of last season. And what it allowed for as well is for John Johnson to flourish. Looking at John Johnson's PFF grades here, like they're quite low at the start of the season, and then it becomes to sort of where Delpit starts to step in, and then they shoot up, and he was really good then for the rest of the season, apart from that Patriots game where I don't think any of our defense decided to show up that day. But having Delpit there obviously gives them so much more flexibility. Him, Johnson and Harrison can all do similar things, so it gives them a lot more versatility and disguise in what they're doing. So hopefully he can come on leaps and bounds this year, and then obviously it helps out John Johnson and Ronnie Harrison as well.
Yeah, and Jim, I don't think we even need to ask you as to what you think about the buzz around Grant Delpit. In fact, even on the WhatsApp chat, just 10 minutes before we started, you found time to get a bit of praise around him. So do you want to make that public on here?
Yes. I've always been a fan of Delpit since his college days. I feel like in his college days, he was probably one of the best players at LSU. And then he came to the Browns. And I felt like he was going to fit in, but then he got injured. And I was genuinely worried that he would not come back from it. But he seems to have come back from it very, very well. And I'm feeling like this year we're going to see the LSU version of Grant Delpit. And I don't think people are ready for the plays that he's going to do.
Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it? I think that's exactly what we're looking for, and that would definitely help the defense, especially at safety. I've always found that we've not been great at safety. And Javonte Moffett is back apparently as well. He got brought in a couple of days back, so always nice to see a familiar face to add to our depth. Right, that's probably as much pussyfooting around as we can do. Let's get into the meat and drink of today's news and today's podcast. Deshaun Watson's disciplinary process has come to an end, at least in terms of disciplinary officers. Sue L. Robinson's verdict. He has been awarded a 6-game suspension starting immediately from this season. So that means that from week 1 through week 6, he is unable to play and will be without pay. So just to outline as to the games of which that is, so that is away at Carolina, then at home to the Jets, at home to the Steelers, away to the Falcons, and then at home to the Chargers and Patriots. His first game will be October the 23rd, I believe it is, October 23rd, at M&T Bank Stadium against the Baltimore Ravens, and his first home game will be Halloween Monday Night Football against the Cincinnati Bengals. So, I mean, we touched on it a little bit last week, and we've gone back and forth on it quite a bit in terms of, how many games is he likely to have? What would be good from a Browns perspective? What do we think would be right? Let me just give you some highlights, though, as to Sue Robinson's report, because she's come out with a 16-page report on her findings. And in terms of why she's come to 6 games now, some people will say it's not enough. Some people will say it's too few. The whole point around it and as to why she has come to this is based on it's the NFL's conduct policy. It's not based in law or anything like that. It's simply based on whether or not he has broken conduct policy around 3 particular areas. So by engaging in sexual assault, by engaging in conduct that poses a genuine danger to the safety and well-being of another person. And then the third point is engaging in conduct that undermines or puts risk to the integrity of the NFL. Now, Sue Robinson found that there was enough evidence to be able to assume, beyond reasonable doubt, that he broke those three. So with the sexual assault, it was the case that there was unwanted sexual touching, and that he created an environment for that to happen, whether inadvertent or not. So that was the first strike. The second, in terms of creating an unsafe environment, was the fact that he used his status in order to threaten their business, and people and the therapists who they interviewed felt that they were unable to work again. They felt they felt hindered by it, etc. And the third count, basically bringing the league into disrepute, and that was very much done through the fact that he was an NFL player. He played on that heavily in terms of his messages via Instagram, etc. So that is the reckoning behind the decision to award a suspension. In terms of the severity of the suspension, it comes from case law, essentially. So because the league did not impose how many games certain breaches would be, they have to then go back to what was previously awarded for other incidents. She relates to a number of different suspension awards for domestic violence, for violent conduct, for bringing the game into disrepute. She brings a lot of these on, but says that 6 games. There's only one count where it's gone beyond 6 games, and even then, the qualifier from the evidence presented to her, she was not presented a lot of evidence, according to the report, but the evidence of which was presented to her was really not enough to get to 6, but it was the pattern of doing it repetitively and almost via a system where he knew what he was doing, essentially, of which bumped it up to 6, but there was not a burden of proof that it would go beyond it. So that is a very Cliff Notes version of the decision today. Jen, let's kick it off with you. From hearing that, obviously, and the reaction of which has gone around it, what are your initial thoughts off the back of this?
I think it's probably the right decision. Saying that she's not received that much evidence, she can't technically go off a lot. But I don't think everyone's going to be happy with the decision. I think people wanted him to be suspended for a year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that I don't think that any decision would have satisfied a majority of people today, because if you only suspend him for 1, they'll be saying, well, why not just suspend him indefinitely? If you suspend him for any more than 6, then you bring up the other things which have come beforehand and say, are these not as worthy? I think that you do end up in a very damned if you do, damned if you don't on that front. But on the fact that she found enough evidence to, in this instance, again, this isn't a legal proceeding or anything like that, but found enough for I'm trying to think of the right word. Is it preponderance? Preponderance, thank you, Owen. That sexual assault has taken place. How do you feel as a Browns fan tonight?
It's hard because it's not an easy thing to know that one of your players has done that kind of thing. It's not nice.
Yeah. Owen?
Yeah, I think it's taken me back personally to when it actually happened, when we traded for him. The same feelings sort of I had that night, which was, I was gutted, a little bit angry, and just disappointed really. And it's probably the same feelings that I've got now, except this time we've got 12 weeks until we actually see him play this time. So yeah, it's a strange one. I think for me, I think it's too light of a punishment. I'll be honest. I know people are going to rip me for this, I'd imagine, but comparing them to other things, like for me the Ridley thing, he gets a year for gambling on his own team to win, yet Deshaun Watson gets 6 games for, as Sue Robinson says, that he's more likely than not to have committed sexual assault. So my own brain can't fathom that. I understand that it's clear cut that Calvin Ridley did break the rules in what he was in gambling, and he shouldn't have done that. But it's just things like that, and I think that's what the average NFL fan's going to look at. They're going to look at what was the last punishment the NFL handed out. Okay, it was Calvin Ridley. He got a year for gambling. Okay, so that therefore in a I would assume in a normal NFL fan's mind, you compare that to what Watson's been accused of, and like I said, Robinson says it's more likely than not that he has done it. Then you look at it and say 6 games is a bit crazy. Taking the Ridley stuff out, I still think it's too light. I expected a year, and especially like I say, if Sue Robinson really does believe that he was more likely to have done it than not done it, I again can't see why 6 games is an acceptable amount. That said, it's a weird one for us Browns fans, isn't it? Because we want to see our team win at the end of the day.
Yeah, you're almost rooting for you to be
for the
less
downfall of your own team. Yeah. So,
yeah, and it's kind of put us in a very unenviable position where you're essentially trying to, I suppose, save the moral of your team as it is. Yeah, definitely. The thing for me is I don't think that people quite understand that what this suspension means. They hear that there was a suspension for these allegations, etc., and they think that there's been no wrongdoing. But the crux of the matter is, and it's very clearly written, that there is a preponderance that there is beyond reasonable doubt that he committed sexual assault, that he is he has committed these acts against these women, and this is just in the 4 instances. There are up to another 50 or so as well when you look at the wider picture. So like you say, Owain, as a Browns fan, it's very difficult to try and put that into the back of your mind as a Browns fan, because you are essentially you are now squared away with this. The one thing of which I will give, and it's something of which you talk about being back in March, and I knew how I wrestled with everything back in March, and I can't get out of Browns fandom now. I'm far too in. It would take a lot to, it's almost tribal sort of thing, where you just look for ways to let yourself know it's okay. For me, I think it's a league-wide issue, and I think that this report has also, it has done just as much against the league and has damned the league as it has Deshaun Watson. Because let's put the Watson stuff to the side for a second and then look at the league and what this says about the league. So Sue Robinson very rightly explains that as part of the disciplinary process and in being fair in dealing with disciplinary action in line with the policy, and with, because you got to think of the NFL as a employer at this point, right? It's not the law, it's as an employer and as an employer tribunal. So you got to look at case law and all the rest of it. You look at some of the players that have gone through the disciplinary process for domestic violence, for other cases of sexual assault. You look at all that. Only one of them, apart from this Calvin Ridley thing, which seems very at odds, goes above 6 games from what I'm reading here in Sue's own report. And seemingly then, oddly enough, doing weed and gambling is worse. Josh Gordon, he was continually suspended in what in light of this seems almost like nothing. But it's because the NFL has its own policies on it and is very strict about particular things. What this tells me is that in its current guise, the NFL is starting to realise that it is far too lax on the culture of its players and the conduct of its players, and it's going to have to negotiate a much better. It's going to have to negotiate a much better player conduct policy with proper penalties, from the outset, if it's ever going to be able to have any sort of credence, really, more than anything else. There was something in Sue's report, and I'm flicking through it on my iPad here to try and find the proper point here. As I've noted above, the NFL is a private organisation and can operate as it deems fit, but the post hoc determination of what constitutes the prohibited conduct here cannot genuinely satisfy the fairness prong of the standard of review or justify the imposition of the unprecedented sanction requested by the NFL. That basically says you can't hand out stuff willy-nilly without some kind of precedent. And the NFL is learning that tonight, and it should have learned that years ago. I mean, you look at Kareem Hunt. Realistically, it was one act, and he had to go through a lot of steps in order to get back. But it still applies, where the number of games of which he actually was suspended for something where there is clear evidence of violence towards a woman, I only got that many games. So just from a Browns perspective alone, I don't know if anyone wants to jump on at that point and add anything on as to what they think about the league in this.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because the NFL has shown up to be, like you said, way too lax in these instances. And it is something they're going to have to change going forward. There's no doubt about that. It's just, for me, there's been a precedent that's obviously been way too lenient in the past, but when is that then allowed to change? If not this one, then we go on to the next time it happens, and then that one, the investigation will presumably be the same conversation where they say, okay, Deshaun Watson only got 8 games, so that means this one can't be above 8 games. So for me, the question would be, when does that change happen? Because, like I said, for me, the next one just follows this one, just like this one has followed the last one. So
that is exactly what this report would say as well. That is exactly what this report basically says as well, because it can't get out of it without applying something on top.
Yeah, which means someone is going to have that unprecedented punishment. And for me, that this probably was the one to get it, because there isn't really anything like this to have happened in the past. You look at Big Ben would probably be the closest to it, but that was, I think, one or two women, which is 1 or 2 women, way too many, by the way. But then you jump all the way to 25, 26. So you would think that this would have been the one to get that unprecedented punishment.
Yeah, I think that what needs to happen is a complete culture change on player conduct. I think that they tried to put a plaster over a gaping wound. And what they actually need to do is say, look, off the back of, first of all, they're going to have to take the L on this. They might appeal it and they might be able to bump it up a few games, but realistically, I don't think they're going to want to open that up to a lawsuit and all the rest of it, because, judging by the report, there is a lot of, Sue has been very fair when you look at it objectively. Now, I don't say that in terms of his morality. I don't say that in terms of the fact that I think that 6 games was just. I say that when you look at it objectively in terms of what she had in front of her, you can definitely see the argument for it. And it would be very difficult, I think, to get an overturned position on it without some kind of ace in the hole. But what needs to happen is a review with the NFLPA, because they're going to have to get their say-so on it, otherwise the collective bargaining agreement is just going to go to pot. But they're going to have to slap some games on particular offences, and if there is a pattern and all the rest of it, they're going to have to set out essentially almost like a fine system, of which you see in football teams, for example. If you do this, you're going to get this many games, and it's not limited to this. If you do it again and again, then you're going to, have it ramp up, etc. I think that that's the only way that you're able to actually do this. Because something else which I found egregious as well, Watson's not getting fined. He is losing just $333,333 on this. The guy's getting $240 million over the next 6 years, is it? That's outrageous. Yeah.
That's like no money to him. That's like
it's pocket
nothing.
change. The only thing I can imagine is that him settling these suits at the very least has cost him a pretty penny. But even then, it's probably still nowhere near enough when you consider what the fine probably should be.
No, and I think a lot of people are taking that portion out on the wrong place. So a lot of media have gone straight for the Browns at this yet again about the contract situation. But as our friend Jack Duffin would point out a million times, that this isn't the first time they've structured a contract like this. It's just what they do with big contracts. So
it just seems almost the problem with that is that it seems far too convenient.
I agree with that.
You look at it for 5 seconds, and you see that there's something there. Like with the schedule, for example, on the NFL side, it just so happens that he's going to come back against the Ravens, and then on Monday Night Football against the Bengals. It seems way too convenient.
That is a fair point, and 100% it does look awful, but at least the Browns can point to that they've done, Denzel's deal like that. They've done, I think, David Njoku's deal like that. They've done deals in the past like that. There's nothing at all stopping the NFL from slapping Deshaun Watson with 10, 15 million fine either. So if media members want to, take shots at the Browns, then they probably should be taking shots at the NFL as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Jen, you got anything else which you want to throw on this one? I'm hopefully going to be closing it very shortly.
I just think that the NFL had a chance to prove a point and say, look, if somebody else does this, this is what you're going to get. But people are going to look at this and think, oh, if I do this or do that, I'm only going to get so-and-so games. I just think they went about it the whole wrong way.
Yeah, if they learn from this, actually, I'll tell you what, I'll ask you both 2 questions. The first one is, should the NFL appeal? Should they appeal and try and get the year here? And I'm, saying this objectively. So obviously, as a Browns fan, from a sporting perspective, you'd probably take the 6 games. But, objectively, from a league perspective, would you like to see them appeal?
I think I would. If they're going to shoot for the year, then I would, yeah. Because we go back to precedent earlier, at least then for the next one, they could sort of point to this. Well, we gave Deshaun Watson a year, so we've got no reason not to give you a year. But I think appealing for the sake of 2 to 4 games, that doesn't do anything for me. Like, it hurts the Browns a little bit, hurts Watson a tiny bit, but I just don't think there's point unless they're going to shoot for the year. And I think the problem with shooting for a year is they're going to get so much backlash from Watson's team. I don't think they're going to consider it, as a worthwhile venture anyway.
Yeah. Jim, what do you reckon?
I think they should, purely to make a statement so everyone knows that it's serious. I feel like they've not taken it as serious. I don't think they was ready for something this big to happen.
Yeah.
And they've just don't know what to do about it, basically. They're just stuck.
And the second question of this is, would you be happy if they took the L on this, but then as part of their learning on it, instituted a much stricter player conduct policy, of which outlined the cost to them in order to prevent this sort of thing in the future? Because it even says in Sue's report here that having something in place that outlines what you would lose helps to stop it happening in the first place. Is that something of which you'd support?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to sit down and seriously think about what they're going to do going forward, because this can't happen again. It just can't.
Yeah, and the main, cynically and, sadly, the main reason why they're going to sit down and talk about this immediately is because it's embarrassing to the NFL. And what does that mean in the long run? It costs them money, and that's where it hurts the NFL, unfortunately. So, we can talk about the morality and stuff like that. It's going to hurt the NFL purse strings long term if stuff like this keeps happening. So that's why they are going to sit down immediately, I would have thought, after all this is done, and set that up, because it'll cost them too much money not to.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. I hope, I seriously hope they do that, not just because of this, but because of the other ones in the past as well. We've seen, although the egregiousness of this and its repeated nature is something which we have not seen in the league, at least nothing of which I've read anyway. You still see far too often about the culture of some of these players and the fact that they're just allowed to go at it again. It makes a mockery of the sport, let alone the league. And also just the fact that we were allowed to trade for him. As soon as there was any hint of this, they should have put him on some sort of administrative leave or something like that. Something of which says you're under investigation. No, you can't be traded at this point, or anything like that.
He was still allowed to be traded last year when there was, criminal cases against him, and the Miami Dolphins almost did pull a trigger on it. So, yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
100%.
and the NFL was just waiting till somebody else was holding the bag. I seriously wonder what the Texans have over Roger Goodell at this point, because they seem to have gotten off scot-free, like you said earlier, Wayne. And it almost seems like they've just been able to pay off their pay off the people that were going up against them, and they seem to be completely off scot-free.
And that's part of the problem as well. That's part of the reason why he only got 6 games, is because, the owners and the teams, they're not, innocent themselves. You look at, Jerry Jones, Schneider, there's a few of them that should have been punished for various things. Robert Kraft, another one. And they haven't, and that's again part of the reason why Deshaun Watson only gets 6 games a year.
Yeah, right. Let's try and look past the decision and move forward, shall we? I'm going to put a line under that. There is going to be an article up on our site by tomorrow morning, full10yards.com/Browns, on the 6 things to consider with the Watson decision. It's very much a case of what we've talked about on this podcast, but just in case you need to make a point to your friends and family about this decision and what it could mean wider. Let's have a look at the sporting implications of this. So, as we said last week, anything below 8 games would probably be seen as a win in terms of the Browns front office and the Browns sporting intentions, which is obviously to get into the playoffs next season. 6 games. So, as I said, that's Carolina, Pittsburgh, Jets, Falcons, Chargers, Patriots. Not all in that order. I got Pittsburgh and the Jets mixed up, but who cares about the Jets? You gotta have someone of who you have a slight distaste for. The Jets is it for me, because I just like pummeling them into the ground. Jacoby Brissett will be QB1 going into those games. Kevin Stefanski has already made that abundantly clear that they are not going after Garoppolo. They are not going after anybody else in the market. They will not be getting Drew Lock. They will not be getting Baker Mayfield. It is Jacoby Brissett. What do you think the record is after 6? I'm only going to go to that 6. We're going to have a schedule run through at some point soon. That is not this episode. For those 6, with Jacoby Brissett under center, whose stats are dangerously close to Baker's last year, from his best year to Baker's worst year, they are very close. What do you give as a record? Owain, I've seen you wince as I've introduced
I want to let
for the
Jen go
past.
first, yeah.
No, why do I have to go first? Oh God, it's so hard. I just don't know because you don't know how he's going to play.
All right, I tell you what. Do you want me to go first then?
Yeah,
Shall I give you guys some thinking time? So Brissett versus Baker, I think that the QBs sort of nullify themselves out, and it's going to be a tale of the defenses. Now, these are 2 of the best defenses going up head to head. I think that Browns probably have just enough quality to eke it out. I think that Baker will end up wilting under the pressure of being up against the old uniform, just because it's a high pressure game for him, and in high pressure ones, he usually ends up wilting. So I'm going to give the Browns the 1-0. Jets suck, 2-0.
Okay.
Now, Pittsburgh at home, that one is interesting. There has been a lot of chatter about Mason Rudolph apparently winning the QB competition currently. Mason Rudolph versus a cardboard cutout is a very difficult competition for QB. So, therefore, I'm actually going to give Brissett the advantage on this. The defenses are, again, very similar. But then again, though, Pittsburgh can do anything against us, it seems. So you kind of have to put that into consideration. So potentially a tie there, if I'm thinking about it in terms of wins instead of records. So currently I've got 2.5.
That is as big of a fence sitter as I've ever seen.
Yeah, you either win or you lose. You don't tie these two.
Exactly, yeah. So 2.5 wins currently. Let's see if I can end up just tacking on an extra 0.5 and getting myself over. This is how I do my my over-unders on the wins columns. You're going to hate me on that episode, I swear. Then who have we got next? Then we have got the Falcons. Not hot on the Falcons this year. I think they're still big into the rebuild, probably able to get away with that one. It will be a lot closer than what it should be because of obviously having Brissett, but I think we'll take that one. So that's 3.5 wins. The Chargers with Jacoby Brissett, no chance whatsoever. We'll take the L on that one. Patriots against Jacoby Brissett. It's at home. It's the only saving grace is that it's at home. No. So I'm going to say 3 to 4 wins. Let's call it 4 on a coin toss against the Steelers. 4-2. That's what I've got. Right. Now that I've played it out for you, you are free to just give your records. You're free to explain. Jen, we'll go to you first.
If I'm honest, I would have gone 4-2. I see us losing to the Patriots and to the Chargers.
Yeah, so 4-0 starts, Brissett having that early bounce, and then us crying out for anybody, literally anybody, not that guy, but I guess it's that guy.
Just stick Myles Garrett at quarterback. Why not?
Can we just sign Jarvis Landry again? He's got a good enough arm. Owain, how about you?
I don't know if we beat the Panthers week 1.
Okay.
Oh, well. I feel like Baker's gonna struggle. I think the pressure's going to be too much.
I don't actually think we go. I think there's quite a low chance we go 4-0 to start. I know you've
Well,
just
I mean,
slagged off
that's usually the case, isn't it? 4-0 is difficult, but we seem to have had it almost gifted to us. If Watson was at quarterback, that starting schedule's 4-0.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. I think the Jets are much, much better than you give them credit for, by the way. I think they had a really...
I gave them a glowing review in last week's 410 Yards podcast, also available everywhere, just as a little plug. I did give them a glowing review. They, they've vastly improved, but I still think they're big in the rebuild. I still think you've got a while until you see them, especially early. I don't see them doing well early. That's the problem.
I think that's the one caveat I'd put about the Jets. I think it's good that we got them early because I think that rookie class is really, really good. So I think by the end of the season, the Jets are going to be much, much better than what they're going to start the season. I think I'll go with 3-3. I think we do batter the Falcons. I don't think they are good at all. We'll see who their quarterback is by that point. Whether they chuck Ridder out there to the Wolves by then. I don't think Mariota's going to do a lot for them.
That's right, Mariota's starting for the Falcons.
There's not too many big players you can name on that team in the minute. Obviously, they got Pitts at tight end,
and Corridell Patterson, who's a fantasy RB extraordinaire.
Yeah, and they've got the corner AJ Terrell, which is one of the best corners in the NFL. But other than that, there's not too many that you can name on that team, really. So I think we steamroll the Falcons, and then we get steamrolled against the Chargers, I think. Our defense didn't turn up in that game last season. So if they do this season, then we may have a fighting chance, especially since the weakness of the Chargers last season was they couldn't stop the run at all. So whether we can tighten up a little bit on defense and then run the ball down their throat all game, maybe we scrape something in that, but maybe that's being way, way too optimistic.
If you're saying that we lose to the Panthers, but we have a chance against the Chargers, I
just think that the Panthers one for me is just like such a bogey game that we could slip up so easy in that game. Everyone is going to be on the Panthers that game. It's in Carolina. Baker doesn't need a chip on his shoulder at the best of times. He's going to have a massive one in that game.
He is, but he's going to have that on the bench as Sam Darnold takes the reins.
Nah, there's no chance, surely. I think there's more of a chance of Matt Corral playing than...
I tell you what, there is an outside chance of Matt Corral. Apparently, he's winning the quarterback competition right now, even though the competition doesn't even include him.
I just think if you're the Panthers, you throw Baker out there no matter what, don't you? Because if he's going to prove himself in any game this season, it's going to be that one.
He is, and he's going to throw an interception right when it matters.
Like you said, though, the Steelers...
The Steelers, like I said, that's the one where, because it doesn't matter who they put in at QB, it's everything else, and the fact that their culture is just beat Cleveland.
2 seasons ago.
Yes, this is very true.
So you never know in that one. I'll go 3-3. I think we'd obviously all be absolutely delighted with 4-2.
To be honest with you, I'd be delighted with 3-3. Yeah, I think it's very tight in that, and I think you're absolutely right. I think that 2-4 is a disaster in terms of looking at playoffs being the goal, just because of how good the start is on paper.
You look at the next 4 after that. You've got the Ravens, Bengals, Dolphins, and Bills.
Yeah, and
so plus Watson's not played by then in a year and a half.
Yeah,
I wouldn't expect him to come out and light it up straight away. So that start is really, really, really important.
Yeah, I think you need 4 to get into the playoffs from that 6.
Possibly, I know we're going to play the schedule game at some point, but yeah, I think you probably have to come up with 4 considering who you're playing.
Yeah, 3, then you're having to borrow from Peter to pay Paul in order to get through, I think. But there is, we've got the talent to do it. That's why I want to outline. The 4-2. Like you say, even the Chargers or the Patriots. You could steal one of those if you catch them on a bad day.
Yeah, definitely.
So there is, our roster is stacked.
I think you should go 4-2. There's no reason why your roster shouldn't go 4-2. I
Just that you're thinking with a Browns fan head on.
Yeah, exactly.
Constant misery,
Disappointment.
paper bag
Yeah.
treatment. Yeah,
We're gonna
no,
go
I get it,
0-6
mate.
probably. Knowing us.
If we go
There's
0-6,
Gareth
we're
the bomb
ending the
0-6 and
podcast.
done.
Yeah, 0-6. I will end this podcast, and it will be no longer because I don't know how I come back from that personally. Actually, I'll be on a cruise at 0-6, so the podcast will continue to at least 0-7. So yeah, there's definitely that. But
I'll go hot take that we'll have to remember by week 5. I'll go that we beat the Chargers.
Okay.
The more I think about it, the more I like that.
Well, don't worry. We're gonna have something I'm stealing from the Around the NFL podcast. You know, the OGs, the sandwich props, where we put our props on for the season. That's going to be an episode as we get closer to the start of the season. So just remember that one, that you're taking a very specific game week win.
Yeah.
And I'm taking that Baker throws an interception in the fourth quarter in game 1. We're going to have to remember these. see, Jen, for the last like 3 or 4 minutes, if you're not watching this on YouTube or on Twitter currently and are listening to it, you'll have seen that Jen has just been sort of losing her shit at everything which I've been saying for the last like 3 or 4 minutes. Just because it's seemingly just tempting fate that we shouldn't talk about Baker throwing an interception, or that the Jets are better than what they are on paper, or something like that. Jen, it's fine. Sarcasm is a British trait. We are the Believeland Brits. It's all good. It's all good. Right. Ladies and gents, I am going to draw a line under Watson for now. Let's not talk about him until September, at least, shall we? Maybe October, if we can get away with that. We'll just do a nice little light piece just to close out the episode. We won't go into the defense. We've only got a few minutes until we need to wrap up. Anyway, we're getting on to the hour. The Browns, as part of their fan engagement, decided to have a vote on what field art should go up on the field this year. Now, this is something I would have loved when we had nothing to actually hope for. You know, this is 1 and 31 style treatment here, where I would love to just have some sort of say and to feel like I'm part of the buzz. But you've got the tweet in front of you guys. I've not got it to post onto the screen, unfortunately, but I'll talk it through. So there are 4 different field arts to choose from, and they all have a particular logo in the middle, and then on the end zones it's a logo, a word mark, either in white or orange, and the AFC logo. You've got the elf who is running and performing a Nick Chubb style stiff arm. You've got 2 different versions of the Cleveland Browns helmet, one with a total side-on view and the standard logo, and then you've got the standard elf as well. First of all, does anyone actually care? And then secondly, is just because I always feel like you should have something at midfield, and we don't. We seemingly have never had anything at midfield, and I'm excited to actually see something at midfield for once. And then secondly, helmet elf, as the whole logo thing with the Browns is always something that has been quite crazy to me. I don't know if you have any particularly held views about it at all. Owen, I see you nodding your head, so I'm going to go to you first.
Yeah, on the field art, that's not something that bothers me in like a lot. I think if I was to choose, it would definitely be the stiff arm elf and the old helmet. That definitely looks the best one of the bunch to me. But I just think our logo is quite boring, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Traditional, I think, is what the hardliners call it.
Yeah, traditional, boring, kind of go hand in hand for me. But you look, I'm just got a schedule up on my screen just now, and yeah, you look around the other teams. They've got some like good logos. We go to the Panthers week 1. I love their logo. It just would be nice to have something a little bit different. Whether that be, I really like the Elf actually. I think they brought out a nice beanie hat last season, all black, with the outline of it was orange. I'll have to dig that out for a podcast at some point. I really, really like that one.
In December, when you have no heating.
Yeah, when it's too expensive to afford heating, which is
It's coming.
it is. No, but I really like the Elf. I've seen dog ones in the past as well. I'm not sure they've ever had like a bulldog as the actual.
It has
logo.
always been a alternative logo. The dog.
And that one I really like as well. I just think we've probably stuck with the worst one of the 3. I think for me.
Yeah, that's intriguing. So the both of you, elf, helmet, or dog. Now, Jen, you know which dog one we're on about, don't you?
I just think about chomps and chomps only. I think chomps rules.
Fair enough. Chomps is a bit more like that weird dog pound logo that they tried to bring out with the rebrand. Weird animated style dog logo. It's for me, it's the old dog logo, which I think are one you're alluding to. It gives me very Chicago Bears vibes with their alternative Bears logo.
But they've stolen our helmet in the last week, so
I know.
We take the dog back now.
Yeah, exactly. I do like the little social war that the Browns hashtag, Twitter handle has seemingly gone into on that as well. With the where did you get that helmet from? Well, you're not going to get your alternative ones, are you guys? But for me as well, like I say, I really like the dog one. The elf's okay. I definitely prefer it to be a secondary thing. Just because I don't want to be known as the Cleveland Elves, because that would be coming. At least if you had the dog, there's something to it. Even though I don't like dogs all that much, and yet I'm a Browns fan.
Do we know where the elf story comes from? That's something that
I don't know where it comes from. Why an elf?
So I do know that story. And here's me trying to find it now. Oh my god, please don't tell me that's the story.
That's a random story on Google.
Oh, so as soon as you type it in, it's quite something. Right, shall I just tell you the little snippet of which it gets? This is by Dogs by Nature. Brownie the Elf, where did it originate? Tommy Flynn was a man with dwarfism who roamed Cleveland's sideline during AAFC games. He would yell at referees and Browns opponents either dressed as a goofy-looking elf or in some type of Cleveland Browns garb. He shagged passes in pre-game warm-ups with then quarterback and future Hall of Famer Otto Graham. So, I believe if I
best story, is it?
Now, if I decide to then read further, I suppose it gets worse because no story gets better. I will dig it up for our next podcast because, that's going to be interesting for me to now read on. But yes, if that does end up being the reason why, would you like to take this moment to retract your position on the elf as the primary logo of the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah, just stick the dog on it. Stick the dog on it.
And then we find out that the dog actually has like terminal cancer and, was actually brought from a family whose, the dog was the only thing that connected them, and they ended up in a weird sort of housing situation and all the rest of it.
What is going on? I've just lost the plot today.
This is what this day has done to us.
Hey, this is the funny part of the podcast. I was told by Owen in no uncertain terms, the last 10 minutes of the last pod was by far the best bit. We need to keep things light and loose. Yeah. This is light and loose, Owen. You have unleashed the very tired hell of a Monday evening.
This is fine by me. I think everyone who's got even a passing interest of the Browns needs something to smile about today, I think. So hopefully
Yeah, we're going to have the
hopefully
Bizarro Browns section, and it's going to be the last bit. It's either going to be something of which we see online and we debate, or it's Bizarro Browns. There
Love
is
it.
no in between.
No.
Believeland Brits podcast. Jen, apologies in advance. So are you going to be able to deal with us for the rest of the season?
I might just get through.
It's all right. You'll have Sean back next week. He usually provides some sort of stability. He's a pod producer himself. Right.
Dear.
On that note, I think that we're going to end it there. We've hit an hour. We've been able to discuss Watson, elves, dogs, training camp. We've had it all. Jen, Owain, thank you both very much for joining. Sean, hope that you're recovering and listening to this and seeing that we did you proud on a day where we really could have used an extra person to have gone through this news. I think I'm going to take a very long time to just get over this, but I can't do that because I've got a full 10 yards podcast to do very, very shortly. Just a few bits to run through. Please do follow us on Twitter at Believeland Brit. That is the singular Believeland Brit. You can also find Browns news from us at 410yards.com/Browns. On the Full 10 Yard site as well, you'll be able to pre-order our spanky new looking 2022 season guide. I am currently designing that. It is a behemoth. It is 160 odd pages of pure A4 brilliance. Take a look at our Twitter handle for a snazzy look at our preview of that. If you use the code BELIEVE10 when you go through to checkout, you'll get 10% off as well. That's full10yards.co.uk/guides. That again, full10yards.co.uk/guides. Buy it, please. This ad has definitely been promoted by the Full 10 Yards network, of which we are a part. So now that we've got through that, Jen, thank you very much. That is it for another week. I'll see you guys next week, and that is the Believeland Brits podcast.